facial skincare, and they were still using soap and water on their face. The real challenge for Pond's, though, is that teenage girls in the Philippines don't watch TV. What they do watch is Korean soap operas on YouTube. So, Pond's created their own version of a Korean soap opera, highly engaging, entertaining video content, with each of the 3 episodes actually playing for 6 minutes. Now, they got phenomenal reach from this and really managed to engage their target audience in a meaningful way. And they demonstrated that by understanding that their audience wasn't watching TV, and by moving to a different content platform, and by telling their story in a different way, you don't get many 6-minute ad spots, they were really able to connect meaningfully with their target audience. So we need to think about our strategy for the long term and think again about where our audience is spending time and how we can best meet them there. And that may mean a focus on video content rather than traditional TV advertising. The third opportunity is to harness the data exchange economy. And we heard about the volume of data that people are giving away without really thinking about it. And there's an opportunity and a responsibility for us as brands to think about what we will give back in return. There's been a lot of fear-mongering in our industry that all of the potential audience that digital makes available to us is an imminent threat of being wiped out due to the installation of ad blockers. And yes, we are seeing ad blockers grow, but we don't think we're facing an ad blockalypse just yet. Because in the work we do, we speak to consumers regularly. And we ask them how they feel about advertising. And the reality is, people actually feel more positive than negative about us tracking their behavior if it means that we're serving them better, more creative ads. Now that's a big responsibility from us as an industry, to ensure that we are serving them better, more creative ads. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond just serving up better advertising. For a pretty impressive $475 million. Now they're giving people a really fantastic free fitness app. And in return, they're getting all of their data about how they're working out, where they're working out, the type of exercise they're doing, the time of day that they're doing it, this time they're spending on it. And they're using this data to inform their product development. They're using this data to inform their marketing and communication strategies. Oh, and they have a pretty significant installed user base of 90 million people that they now have a direct line of communication to. And by giving people this fantastic fitness app, they've got that place on their phone secured. They're one of the few apps that people are going to be using on a daily or several times a week basis. And this is a really powerful place for them to be. They understand the power of the data exchange economy. The next opportunity we see is the opportunity to define and then activate the moments that really matter to your brand, the moments where your brand can be most meaningful. And I'm not talking here about real-time marketing. I'm talking about the many, many different moments that we can be relevant. Because we know that media has changed. We know that the phone has been a big driver of this. This is US data, and in the US, we have 83 single sessions of being on our phone every day. Every time we go to our phone to unlock it, to do something, and then close it again. And that's 83 opportunities to engage with customers that didn't exist in a pre-mobile phone era. Because as unpredictable as we like to think we are, there is certain habitual behaviors we demonstrate that can present an opportunity for brands to connect with us. And this is a really nice example from Johnson & Johnson in the baby care category. We were mining social data for Johnson & Johnson, and we identified a 4 a.m. spike in conversation. And this was young mothers who were going online looking for advice and guidance for how to get their little babies back to sleep in the middle of the night. Now, delving further into this data, we identified that it was a tablet moment. The mums were holding their babies. They weren't on their phones, they certainly weren't sitting at a PC, but they were able to tap out a message on their tablet. Now, what this does is present Johnson & Johnson with a fantastic content opportunity, an opportunity to create really relevant content that's got the right balance between being supportive and guiding mothers in what's quite a lonely time of night, optimized by tablet and delivered to them at the time at which they need it. Now, pushing overt advertising is probably not going to be very much appreciated at this time, but getting the balance right can present a great opportunity for Johnson & Johnson once they've identified that moment and then activate around it meaningfully. The last opportunity I'd like to share is the opportunity to deliver personalization at scale, which sounds like a bit of a contradiction in terms, but we can do it. This is everybody, sorry, gone too far. This is everybody who's talking about Pepsi on Twitter. We're following all of their conversations. And the interesting thing to note here is that the conversations are really distinct. There's no crossover whatsoever between the conversations that happen between the football fans and the girl gamers. So what this does is present Pepsi with an opportunity to develop really targeted, really tailored content and campaigns and take it to those communities based on what they know they're interested in. And I'm going to finish with an example of a European brand. I've gone too far again. This is Zalando. And Zalando is Zalando is a European retailer, online retailer. And last year, they started shipping Topshop clothes to Germany. Now, Topshop is a high street brand, but it has very strong fashion credentials, and it's very aspirational for an audience of teenage girls. And this is what they did. Is it going to play? We might get to see what they did. Okay, I'll try and explain the advert. What we would be able to see here would be Cara Delevingne. And Cara Delevingne is the model of the moment, so very on brand for them. And Cara Delevingne filmed 1,000 different adverts for them, talking about bringing Topshop not just to their town, not just to Germany, but to specific towns in Germany. 1,000 hyper-localized different adverts. And these adverts were sent to teenage girls all over Germany via Facebook. So imagine you're sitting in front of your Facebook feed, and up pops Cara Delevingne telling you about a really cool brand, not just coming to Germany, but coming to your town in Germany. Now that feels really personal, and it really feels as though the brand values you. So they got it right with really hyper-local targeting. And I seem to have lost my slides completely, but I'm getting to the end. So just to recap, the five of the opportunities that we do see for marketeers in the connected world, and there's many more if I had more than 20 minutes, 5 of the opportunities we do see are to really understand that social fragmentation is happening, and it presents us with huge opportunities if we can understand where our audience is. That our audience is moving away from TV towards content, and we need to recognize and benefit from the opportunities that this presents us with. That there is a wealth of data that we're asking our customers to give us, and we need to think about how we can give them value in return for this.
Hi guys, I've got some great news from Zalando.
She's here now, being upstaged by Cara Delevingne. Let's watch her while she's here. Okay, she's gone again. Let's keep going. We'll move on without her, thanks. The opportunity around data. The fourth opportunity is around defining the moments where your brand can be most relevant and most meaningful to your customers, and planning how you're going to develop content and activate it around those moments. And finally, to think about how you can develop and deliver personalization and deliver this at scale. And they're just 5 of the opportunities we see, and I'm sure we'll be talking about more during the course of the panel discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Just a moment to check some facts. How many of you guys believe you guys are social network addicted? Raise your hands. Really? That all? If I
I don't know how I'm going to go against the 2 amazing ladies beforehand. I think I've got an interesting challenge. Let's see if I can get the slides. In building the omnichannel experience. Realistically, at the moment, I don't think many brands are actually there yet. Obviously, in Australia and the US, we're a lot further ahead. But it's definitely something that's needed, and I'll go through why. Just quickly on me, who says technology is not cool? Yep, sure. I'm an entrepreneur, a digital change agent, and a pragmatic futurist. So a pragmatic futurist is somebody who looks at the stuff that's going on and then actually tries to apply it. So I spend a lot of time thinking about new stuff. So just looking at the omnichannel approach, at the moment, I think a lot of businesses are in the multi-channel space. Even at 3M, I think we're very siloed. We're trying to look at cross-channel. Some of the better guys in the world are moving to that cross-channel space where they're actually getting that data to flow across their different elements. But omnichannel is obviously the desired state where the customer is driving everything and everything's communicating with each other. No, it's not. Yeah, okay. So just looking at the 4 tactics. We'll quickly go over this. So overcoming the organisational silos. By far, I think this is definitely the first area you've got to focus on. It's something that takes a lot of time. And I'll talk a little bit more on that next. Customer-centric, I mean, the ladies have both spoken about that. Everybody, it's the internet of me. It's the internet of people. We've got to start to look exactly at how our customers engaging with our company. Creating those relevant and meaningful moments is really important, and the contextual element is vital. And last, looking at multi-channel attribution. So actually understanding which channels are working, not just assuming that the last touch point is the place where you should invest the most amount of money. So starting with the organisational silos, with 3M, we've got 40 business units. Most of them don't talk to each other. Some of them don't even know the other one exists. It's a lot of tug of war about, you know, I'm the only person in Australia who's cross-divisional from a marketing perspective. And they say to me, oh, can you build this amazing experience for us, but don't let anybody else use it. So having that attitude in the company, it can really be quite damaging. So that's a culture we're trying to change within 3M, but I think it's prevalent across most big organisations. It's something you can't do. The other part of that is collecting all this data and then leaving it in a bucket to rot is the worst thing you can possibly do. Having spreadsheets full of email addresses that sit there and actually don't get spread across the organisation is pointless. So doing all that work and then actually not facilitating with that data is wasting your time, basically. So it's vitally important. And the organisational change is the most important part. The technical stuff is all there. You can do it. Everything's available for you to actually communicate with each other, share data, do all that work, customise experiences across your organisations. But it's a cultural change you've actually got to focus on doing. And that's the stuff that takes the most time. So the customer-centric approach, I'll dive a bit into this. I've worked for a lot of B2C organisations as well as B2B. Especially B2B, a lot of companies don't actually think about the customer. They think about the channel partner, they think about how they're getting to market, they think about their competitors, but they forget about that the people that are buying the products are still people at the end of the day. So if you can tap into what their needs and what their desires are, you're going to be further ahead as well. So looking at where the customer is, I mean, there's some fantastic data that Zoe shared earlier. You guys have got a rapidly growing online presence, but don't forget about the traditional markets as well. I mean, I see these melding as well, as both Sharu and Zoe mentioned. Digital is going to start to influence the physical space. But a big part of that is understanding the journey. It's not linear with your customer. So where are they touching your brand in the digital space as well as the physical space? Where is the managed elements that they're engaging with, and where's the unmanaged? I mean, it's really important to understand that most of the conversations you can't control. So you've got to be aware of what's happening and being able to put together strategies to, take advantage of those serendipitous moments that your customers might deliver you. And then looking at customization. Generic experiences just don't work anymore. I mean, the number of times you get an email that's about a product you've just bought, or you get targeted with ads about the shoes you bought yesterday or whatever. You've got to start to customise these experiences, because people are just going to disengage with your brand. And it's so easy to switch now, and there's also so many competitors in the market. So it was great. It was like we almost coordinated the videos here. But so Minority Report's one of my most favourite films. Philip K. Dick's an amazing writer. So interestingly enough, I mean, while this looks like science fiction, this was done with Rebecca Minkoff and eBay only 2 years ago. So if you look here,
the connected wall.
So you basically got this experience happening
shows the
now.
latest Rebecca Minkoff brand content. By pressing the mirror, she initiates an interactive experience where she can browse the latest looks, find products she likes, even request a fitting room. She can order drinks and download the mobile app directly.
So I want to be able to go
and by
shop clothes and
pressing
order drinks
Send to
as
My
well.
Room, our shopper can initiate a one-on-one stylist session. When the room's ready, she'll get a text message. Upon entering the fitting room, the shopper will find the product she requested in addition to suggestions from the stylist. Adjustable lighting in the fitting room also allows the shopper to change and control her environment. The fitting room uses RFID to magically recognize each item in the room. If the shopper needs a different size, cut, or color, she can easily request it from a stylist by simply touching the glass of the mirror. The shopper also has the option to attach everything she's tried on in the fitting room to her personal profile.
And that's a really important thing is, I mean, while having that store experience in store, they're able to take that experience away with them once they've done that, build a profile and actually have that engagement again later on, or share it with their friends. So just to give you some context around that, I mean, that was done 2 years ago. I was speaking to Hemas yesterday. There are some startups in the universities in in Sri Lanka that are actually looking at this stuff already. So it's not going to be millions of dollars to get this stuff implemented. You've got these young startups that are already looking at these digital touch points. So engaging with those small companies to actually help you facilitate this stuff is vital. So this is a really interesting one as well. So you can jump on here. This is North Face. So North Face is using IBM's Watson to actually customize your buying experience of apparel. Really amazing. Watson's, something you can basically jump on and engage with and have up to 1 million API calls. So customizing the buying experiences online using their artificial intelligence. So you can jump on that experience. That's live now, and they've seen a huge uplift in purchases online. So the other one as well is, and this is obviously a more simple engagement point. So everyone knows what this is? Another question. This is Amazon Dash button. So the Amazon Dash button is a simple Bluetooth button that allows you to buy the product with a single click. So you're taking that single click to purchase experience offline. So suddenly you've got that online experience moving into the physical world. They've just released 50 more of these buttons for brands. The interesting part about it is it actually came from a small company in Dubai, a tiny pizza place that actually started this idea. So for a couple of rupees, you can build a little Bluetooth button like this with your company, especially if you've got a company that's engaging constantly and always wanting to buy additional products from your company. If you can do that with a single click in the physical world, you're ahead of the game with that. So actually understanding where your investments are is really important. I mean, the big part of this is making the assumption that that last point of purchase is where you should invest the money, or search is where you should invest the most amount of money, just because that's where the person, the last digital touch point was before they actually sort of went and bought the product, is really dangerous, because you can spend a huge amount of money where actually looking at maybe an earlier part of the funnel, say display or video, was where you should be focusing your time. You have to look at the entire journey of the customer, and every customer, every digital touch point is unique. So customers are going to engage different depending upon what mood they're in, what access they've got to different devices. So you've got to actually invest in those right platforms at the right time. So just jumping into some of the case studies, Disney does an amazing job. I mean, this is especially focused on their Disneyland venues. If you go on and book with Disney, the experience straight away is a level of engagement. You get targeted, and obviously I was doing a lot of research, so I was getting targeted quite a lot, but their ads are quite targeted along how far along the journey you are. So if you've jumped on and just started to look, they'll ask you to come back and continue the journey with them. If you've already booked, you start getting ads that are more about what you can do while you're at the venue. So the ads are really, really targeted. The interesting thing that they implemented a couple of years ago was a magic band, which is sitting in the middle. So the magic band basically, not only does it allow for digital interactions inside the actual parks themselves, but you're getting that sent out to you weeks or even months in advance. So suddenly the children are all excited with the brand already. They're engaging with the brand, weeks or months before they're even going to attend there. What they found is that the kids wanted to wear these bands even though they didn't work with other things every day. So they wanted accessories, so it actually became a revenue stream that they weren't even aware of. And they've expanded it. It's become a collectible item as well. So the interesting thing was in Asia, though, the wearables, probably haven't taken off as well from the testing that they're doing. So they've built a really robust mobile experience as well. So you've got to tailor that. You can't just implement something and assume that everybody's going to use it. So you've got to tailor it for different parts of the world as well.
Hi, I'll take a large coffee and leave room, please.
That's $3.26. $3.26.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry.
Oh. There you go.
Next. Hi. Hi, can I help you?
Oh, yes, 2, please. Oh, There you go.
Oh, I don't, what is that?
Hi. Thank you.
Thank you. Once you've experienced My Magic Plus at Walt Disney World Resort, you'll want to use it everywhere.
This is going to be awesome.
So the interesting thing with that, as I said, they do a great job with their media, engaging with you online and in other channels, up front, social in particular as well. But as I said, once you get the device, suddenly you're even more connected to the brand. You've got the app on your phone, your kids are wearing it, they're all excited about going to Disneyland. They get to the venue. So with the venue, they've actually seen, which is pretty amazing. I mean, obviously you can see there you can pay for things, you can get into your room. One of the unexpected benefits that they had was they had an 80% reduction in lost children. So it was a huge resource for them to actually, be running around and finding these lost children for people. But because the customers are suddenly all connected, they're able to pinpoint a child within 20 metres and be able to find exactly where they are. So that huge benefit was it wasn't an overt sales benefit, but suddenly it's a massive revenue being able to be brought back into the company because they're not spending all that time. It also creates those amazing magical moments. So whenever a child engages with a character within the park, the attendee who's with the character can actually scan the wearable and get the child's name and even their birthday. So Mickey's suddenly speaking to you and asking you, saying happy birthday to you or saying your name without you being prompted. So it's creating those really customised experience and on scale as well. The interesting part that they're starting to look at is taking that device into their retail stores. So outside of the actual parks themselves, they've already got these enamoured fans who are wearing this technology and being tracked. If they can then take that into retail, the benefits are enormous for them as well. So interestingly enough, I worked with Milo, so about a year and a half ago, Nestle Vietnam created a wearable device, and it was a fairly simplistic engagement and very campaign focused to start with. What we did is we actually looked at that and said, how can we actually increase the engagement with this device? I mean, all their kids want to have a Fitbit like their parents, but it's really cost prohibitive. So what we did is we built a really inexpensive device, and then saturated the engagement. So there was touch points in store. If you look at the picture on the left at the bottom, that was taken 3 days ago when I was in Sydney. So there's all these in shopping market touch points as well. But I'll just show you the video now.
We know how important it is for kids to stay physically active and nourished with a healthy, balanced diet. That's why we've created Milo Champions, an exciting new health, fitness and activity tracker and app designed to help your kids make the most of every day. As a parent, you can find out how much physical activity your child is getting each day by syncing the app to their Milo Champions band. It's an activity tracker worn around their wrist that measures how many steps they've taken and the number of kilojoules they've burnt through physical activity. The Milo Champions app also helps kids find out how they're tracking against their daily activity goals. You can keep track of your child's nutrient intake by adding meals to the nutrition calculator. It will tell you how many kilojoules they've consumed and display their energy balance. You can also encourage your child with Milo Valuable Player badges in areas like leadership, positivity and teamwork to reward them for their hard work and commitment. Kids can challenge their friends to compete in daily, weekly or weekend steps challenges. They can also access fun and informative content like videos, physical challenges and fun sporting hints and tips. Kids can also scan a Milo tin using the Milo Champions app to access interactive augmented reality content and learn new sporting skills from well-known Australian and international sporting stars that will encourage them to get out and stay active. Milo Champions, helping kids make the most of every day.
So the important part of that, obviously we saturated retail and media, but once they received the device, they were able to share those experiences and the rewards and such that they'd actually achieved back on social media. But the most critical part was the engagement with the product itself. So by actually having the child do the activities, but then get these augmented experiences that could only be activated via getting the product out of the cupboard, we suddenly saw a huge increase in people. There was a 20% increase in sales just from the fact that they're getting this out of the cupboard. They might as well have another Milo while they're there. So, and that obviously goes back to them coming back in store to buy more product. The interesting thing that I'm seeing now, though, is obviously we touched on it a little bit, but the artificial intelligence boom is coming. So the product on the left is the Google Home product, which hasn't been launched yet, but the Amazon Echo product, which has been launched about a year and a half ago, is basically your Siri for shopping. So in the US, a person can just say to the product, to the Echo, I've run out of toilet paper, buy me more toilet paper. They don't have to specify a brand, they don't have to specify a specific product. Because the Amazon Echo is connected to their shopping history, they know what brands they want. They know what their criteria of purchase is and what their price points are, etc. So you're not actually in control of which brand the AI selects. So that's a huge shift that you've actually got to understand, is that if you can't really do advertising to an AI. And that's what I think the really interesting part is. I mean, how do you influence what an artificial intelligence selection is? So they're not going to care about emotion. So this is where it's vitally important, as I went back earlier, is that all your data is, across the organisation, it's up to date and current, because the AI doesn't really care if you've got a really cool video or if you've got a celebrity. And they're going to start making more and more buying decisions on behalf of the customer. So augmented reality, the interesting thing is that I've downloaded the Pokemon Go app. If you want to get some Pokeballs, the fountain's a really good source for Pokeballs. So the fun part about that is that the Pokemon app only came out a week ago. It's now got more users than Twitter in a week. So suddenly you've got this augmented experience where people are running around, they're going into stores to find Pokemon characters, and they're engaging in the digital and physical world. So it's dramatically changing that. So this is a product called All411.
Shoppers today have gone mobile,
it uses
with more than
the,
80% using mobile devices to help
the new
them
camera
shop.
technology that's
What's
being,
interesting is that 90% of all purchases still happen in physical retail stores. But whether it's in a store or online, shoppers want information and tools.
I'll skip that one. Just going back on the 411 product, they're using the new camera technology that's coming out in the phone, so the Project Tango camera, and people are going to be able to map the environment inside stores. So you've got to start to think about how, from an augmented perspective, is my brand represented. So you've got to look at, okay, how do customers want to engage through their screen and then eventually with eyewear with my brand. So this is, So this is Magic Leap, still in beta and still a very stealth company. But these are augmented eyewear. The product you saw me before wearing was a HoloLens. This is going to significantly change how people start engaging. You think your website's not responsive is an issue? When your website goes away and suddenly all the information is served in your field of view, your data and your information is not going to be served on like these large sort of environments. It's all going to be pieces of information. So you've got to make sure you've got adaptive content that's able to be served within these new platforms.
Everest conquered, the New Zealander Edmund Hillary got his first mail and congratulatory telegrams from George Lowe, a fellow countryman and expedition colleague.
It goes into e-commerce
Just
in a
35
second.
miles from Kathmandu, capital of Nepal, Hillary and Tenzing were welcomed and congratulated by their fellow members of the expedition.
I'll see if I can. My videos are usually being cut down. Yeah, so it goes into e-commerce here. So if you can actually show physical product digitally, so here you can actually look at the shoes, you've actually got to start thinking about how do I represent my products in 3D. So it's really important to start to think about that now. I mean, this thing's probably 2 years away, but if you aren't thinking about this now, you're going to be behind the game, and your brand's going to be invisible once we move into this augmented space. So just quickly going through, I've got the stop sign now. So the 4 tactics: overcome those silos, focus on the customer, create those relevant and contextual experiences, and then make sure you're paying attention to where your brands are making the most impact. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. The odd thing about being a session chair is you're naturally assumed to know everything that people are going to talk about. But I must be honest, and Joe, I mean, omnichannel is not something that was in my horizon. I don't know what it was for most of you, but I mean, it's a learning session and I suppose a learning opportunity for all of us. Now, Vidya, I've been looking at your title. I'm wondering if you're going to talk about the category you're always so excited about, or something to do about brands that you also share a passion for. So anyway, let's figure that out. Over to you, Vidya.
Thanks, Iman. It's really, really good to be back home. Been in and out of the countries, been away for a few years, and really feels good to be back home for good in my home country, Sri Lanka. And thank you, Lakshman, for inviting me again on this platform. Imal introduced me and Lakshman introduced me as being passionate about brands. Definitely I am. Lakshman introduced me as a senior marketeer. I'm not too sure of the senior part though. Still very young at heart. But you know, I'm supposed to talk about marketeers' new role in the digital age. I guess for me, after being a brand manager, marketing manager, global brand manager, global marketing manager, having worked across 14 countries, GM marketing, whatever role that each of the roles that I did, I really don't think that I'm a marketeer. And it went a bit too fast. Am I controlling it or are you controlling it? Okay. Right. So I'm definitely not a marketeer. I don't think I'm a marketeer. How many marketeers are in this room today? Not too many? A show of hands, please. There are very senior marketeers, very experienced marketeers as opposed to senior people. Having done the role over 17 plus years, I don't think I'm a marketeer. What I do think is I'm a value creator. Am I pointing at the right direction? Yes, I do think I'm a value creator. So definitely not a marketeer, a value creator. Now, why do I say that? So the traditional definition of marketing and marketeer are no longer valid in the context of a connected consumer. Many of us spoke today of how all of us are in many devices, connected all the time, and connectivity is the basic need that should be added to the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that is definitely one of the reasons why traditional marketing and the thinking of I'm a marketeer does not really work. You need to look at every aspect of the value chain and think of the consumer experiences that they go through and see how you can add value at every aspect of the value chain for our brands, for our businesses to make sense to the consumer. And of course, it's not about just doing marketing, it's about creating, co-creating, curating those experiences along with the consumer and not on your own. That's why I think that I'm a value creator and not a marketeer. Now, if we are to be value creators in this changing world, we definitely need to see how the world is changing. I'm not going to touch too much on this because many people have spoken about it, but for sure, people are in control. They are filtering. They have the choice of what to see, what not to see. They are filtering what's coming onto them so much because there's an explosion of data information that's being thrown to them. So if we are to be relevant to them, the trick is to ensure that you don't get filtered out. So how do we do that? People call the shots. The marketeers or the value creators don't. The companies don't. So how do we, whether it's in the digital age or in a different industrial age or whichever age we are, how do we understand that and ensure that we are relevant to the consumers? So the trick is to be part of their world and not to get filtered out. And of course, we are not going to get into the details of how we won't get filtered out, but that's a key base level thinking that we need to apply every time that we look at what we are talking about, how we are talking with the consumer. The second reason why people are in control is also the media explosion and of course the number of internet devices, that's connected devices that coming in. Each individual is holding 3 devices. I'm sure in this room each one of you have your own 3 devices. So how do we kind of look through all that explosion that's coming through and make it relevant to them? And the other thinking that we also need to change to be a value creator is not to think, oh, in the digital era, it doesn't reach the masses. Even in Sri Lanka, if Facebook was a radio station, it's going to reach 4 or 5 million people. So it is changing very fast. It is not that, okay, only TV or radio will reach the masses that I want to reach and I will ignore everything else. So companies need to ensure that the processes within the company facilitate the system of reaching people more effectively in a customized manner using the new mediums, channels that are coming up. The fourth reason why we need to think of value creation and not pure just marketing is because the competition, the boundaries of competitive framework is blurring. We are not in a world of media strategy, we are in a world of content strategy. We are not in a world of mass communication but customization. We are talking startup mentalities. So when you look at the content that you're creating, there's content coming from very different categories. Whether you're in a dairy industry or a home care industry or a personal care industry, doesn't matter anymore. What matters to the consumer is there is such an explosion of information and content being thrown to her that is relevant, and we need to really identify what is the mind space that we are prepared to occupy. The mind space is not about the share of throat, share of stomach, how much of per capita consumption that is going to happen, but it's the mind space ownership. Because every need state that the consumer has is fulfilled by the content that you're going to throw at her. So to be relevant, marketeers need to definitely look at the content and the blurring competitive framework and boundaries that we have. So 4 broad changes where marketeers need to be aware of, and the role of marketing is changing. Maybe this needs a battery change. Just give me a sec. You're doing it? You go to the former slide and, okay, great. So the role of marketing is changing. The role of marketing is changing is because mass communication is going to customization. One-way communication is going to the ongoing conversations, and media strategy to create, co-create, and curate content strategy is what's happening right now. To shift our media strategy to create, co-create, and content, it enables us to adapt to the evolving consumer needs and go on. Play the video, please.
I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of bumpy roads and heavy winds. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you. What you see is a body crafted to perfection, a pair of legs engineered to defy the laws of physics, and a mindset to master the most epic
said not to go too hard.
So I really like this video because I thought it was a brilliant initiative by Volvo. It resulted in a huge user-generated content, as you can see, 28.7 million views and so on and so forth. So it's a big viewed video, as well as it's a very good example of co-creating content. The next one is about one-way communication and ongoing conversations. And again, an interesting example from Durex. I'm sure every one of you know what that is.
And make Durex the favorite choice. When you're a 21-year-old stallion, what might be the best reason to put it on?
I'm pregnant.
To be honest, guys don't really care that much about sexually transmitted diseases. But babies, they just won't disappear with a visit to the doctor. So we thought, let's simulate the experience of having a newborn and give you a taste of what it really feels like. We created a mobile application where you can knock up a friend's phone. Download and install the application. Find a phone to mate and gently rub the two phones against each other. And there you go. The baby will require your utmost attention. Feed it, tickle it, wobble, bubble, or huggle it. Use every trick in the book to make it stop crying. Every time you close the application, you will be reminded, use Durex. With Facebook Connect, the world will know you've become a dad.
So interesting, right? It's an ongoing conversation to remind you, and it's a really good example. There are two other videos which I won't share, but Lakshman will upload it in the site for you to look at. Mass communication to customization. It's a brilliant example of how, two examples. One is how British Airways, through the GPRS tracking technology, tried to give specific messages on when the flights are going and how it's coming back. Second one is about a pizza company that increased sales by 500% by creating a customization app. So I guess the message that I want to leave you with is, while we adapt, flow, and change according to the world, we have to be authentic. No campaign can be not authentic. It has to be based on real insights, emotionally engaging, but of course has to give a return to the brand that we are all trying to build so passionately. And the first thing that all of us have to do is to stop thinking digital strategy when you are trying to operate in the digital world.
Now, Japan Post also was facing the same problem, right? Because in Japan, people weren't really going to post offices, posting letters. It wasn't happening. They're early adopters of technology. So what Japan Post has done is looked at combining forces with IBM and Apple, and they've come up with a tablet which is meant to take care of senior citizens in Japan, because the average age is much, much higher. And what they've done is you can, for a very nominal fee, get a service where somebody will actually look you up every week to see that everything is okay. The app on the tab, and not on the phone, on the tab, because they can't see very well on the phone, so on the tab is also a reminder for medicines you need to take in time, what food you need to have, how you need to exercise as you're older, etc., etc. It's adding a lot of value. That's an entire repurposing of Japan Post, which is something that the Sri Lankan Post can actually do. It's possible to do that. Now, the death of any business is going to be when you sit back and say, I've become redundant and there's nothing I can do. You have to evolve. And so either you start an idea with a certain big purpose or you repurpose.
Charu, just keep on going at it, right? I mean, these all very innovative thinking. Why don't we innovate in our part of the world? We are all quite good at outsourced operations, being extensions of global operations and global ideas. Why don't we, in our part of the world, innovate?
I guess it must. Well, we've started doing that. I think we've started doing it. I think countries have started realizing that just being an outsourced corner of the world has gotten us to the map, somewhere in the world map, but it's not going to give us the edge we need in this big quantum leap. But I think it's also somewhere rooted culturally, I think, just deviating from technology. I think it's not a technology barrier anymore. It's a cultural barrier. I think Indian and Sri Lankan cultures are very similar in many respects, you know. So we are, from the childhood, we are taught a lot of patience, we're taught respect, we are taught to accept things the way they are because you do not retaliate, you do not speak against things and people. So those come and clash with modern values of how innovation has to develop. Because to be innovative, you first have to ask the question, why? In the older times, I think children weren't encouraged to ask those questions to start with, right? So I think today, those things, those value systems are changing. So I think we will start seeing a lot more. So for example, I would still come and, I would encourage you all to look at and ask the question, why is my market just 21 million? Okay, and even if I get 4 million on radio station, if Facebook were to become a radio station, as you were talking about, why should I restrict myself to just 4 million? Can I look at a much larger canvas and see how can I innovate on the experience and service and take it cross borders? So if I were to talk about omni-channel, it should really be more omni-border.
Thank you, Cheryl. I mean, this also, I mean, pure, from a cultural perspective, both from a culture as a country, as well as culture of enterprises. One is, I suppose, one restriction to innovation and pursuing new things is this aspect of risk-taking. Is there a way of taking risks safely, Joe? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I get challenged all the time. 3M's a 107-year-old company, and they're really scared of taking these risks and risking that revenue. I think the really interesting way of doing it is to actually either set up a startup type of model where you've got a group which is inside the organisation but completely separate, and try and not focus on your primary stuff, but focus on the edge cases, focus on the things where revenue may already be falling, you may already be losing market share. Take the risks in those areas, because what have you got to lose at the end of the day? As opposed to just sitting there and saying, it's a global crisis, manufacturing's going down, et cetera, So, well, manufacturing's going down, how do I repurpose that? How do I actually start to build something that could actually be a completely new revenue stream? And I think that's where you've actually got to pay attention, as opposed to sort of just doing it like you always do. And it's such a lazy way for people to think, is, oh, we'll just keep doing it. If we work harder, we'll get there, which is not the mentality to take. You've got to work smarter.
I mean, so talking about purpose-built enterprises, repurposing, etc. I just want to ask you this question. I mean, now, everything that we are on today is all about innovation. I mean, this whole brand summit is about innovation. What is your perspective in terms of how multinationals, the issue, approach this, and fundamentally from a process of, when we talk of innovation, we have a preconceived notion that innovation is all about product development. So every time you start discussing about innovation, you start figuring out when the next R&D meeting is, right? So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. What is your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there needs to be a wider context for the innovation. We need to bring in the startup mentality, the entrepreneurship in us out more. There's different ways to innovate, not necessarily on the product, and each person can add value to the consumer, looking at whether it's frugal innovation, eco-innovation, process innovation, product innovation. There are many types, red ocean, blue ocean, and we've all read the books. So one is to have the wider context and knowledge of what innovation is. Second, the way to facilitate that is also linked to risk-taking. The companies, whether it's multinational, startup, local, doesn't matter, need to facilitate internal processes that allows the people in the team to come up with this innovation. The appetite for risk-taking is limited at times. The processes can facilitate an increased appetite for risk-taking. A percentage of your NSV or your turnover can be kept aside to take the risky projects. This type of initiatives will bring the innovation culture.
Thanks, Vidya. But one more thing, just extending from that. One of the things, particularly in our field, particularly in marketing, most of the new innovations have an element of risk. And most of the new innovations, particularly in media, can't be measured. Now, you and I know that we report to boards, we report to lots of accountants, lots of auditors, lots of research guys who come and present various stuff, and we are accountable for that. Now, how do you still innovate, particularly from a marketing perspective, when tools are yet not fully available to measure its effectiveness?
I guess that's part of the risk-taking as well. So as I said before, one way that I have seen an experience that is successful is keeping aside a percentage of your turnover, as these are the projects that would allow risk-taking and to innovate. Second, to build that innovation culture, it's about looking at around you, around the world, understanding the consumer, and really looking at what's going to be, like Charu said, useful for her, useful for him. Because if you really understand the deep-rooted motivations of a person, especially from a marketing perspective, we could really build on more innovation culture.
Can I just add something to what she's saying? Actually, completely agree with you. But I think, a big challenge is that all of you will go back and expect someone in the company to set up an R&D and an innovation cell to make things happen, right? The team that is here, the people who are here have to make it happen. No one's going to do it for you when you go back to your offices, because you're always waiting for someone in the board, a CEO to do it, some strategy person to come up with it. No, it's in the DNA. So one of the things we've actually done, for example, and you can take a leaf from that, is go back, get together with your team of 6 people, look at the business that you have. Every 3 months, look at a what-if scenario and pitch for a business. For example, that's what we do. We've set up a system that every 3 months, the accounts we are working on is on a pitch internally, right? It's a long contract with the client, so it's not going to go away. But we put it on a pitch every 3 months to say, okay, here are what-if scenarios. For example, there's a 500-acre new city coming up, being developed in collaboration with the Chinese. What if the Chinese start coming into your garment industry and start bringing cheap garments and cheap fabric, but innovative fabric from their country to be tailored here? You will still have it being sold here and tailored here, but you may actually have to lose the fabric part of the business. So what if is a scenario. Think about it every 3 months. That's the way to innovate, not by thinking that somebody else will do it for you.
I think it's all about the spirit that you're in the company, right? That's what you're talking about. I mean, Joe, I just want to talk to you about that. I mean, all of us come from well-entrenched organizations that are set in our ways, etc. So how do you bring in this whole spirit of disruptive enterprises into well-entrenched organizations?
Yeah, it does take new blood, I think, is a really important thing. I mean, the reverse mentoring stuff is really important. Setting up something that, has a bit of structure about it. I mean, I got brought in as the first, cross-divisional resource within the company. My team has been there for 32 years and 20 years, so these guys have been there a long time, so they accept the models, they accept that, this is always the way it's going to work. We know we have to take this extra click or do this extra step, or we always just advertise on television. They don't question anything because they've been there for 20 years. They're comfortable, they're just going about their day, and they don't see that change. I spend so much time, looking at the latest thing, looking at the newest thing, so I challenge every single meeting. So it's actually having those points. I do agree to Charu's point as well, though, is if you're here, there's a reason you're here, is because you are trying to look at this. Take it upon yourself to investigate that stuff. Go in there and actually look at how you can take a small part of your business that frustrates you and improve that very small thing. I mean, the tiny processes can lead to huge amounts of revenue. There's a really interesting case of Coca-Cola where there was a guy working in the factory in South America who noticed that they were shipping these entire truckloads of empty bottles for Coke, huge pallets that were really light and really bulky. And he's like, there must be a better way. So he was a factory floor guy, and he realised that they could actually have the bottles crushed and shipped crushed, and then pump air into them on the moment before they're going to fill them. That created billions of dollars in efficiencies from this one guy thinking about that, and he actually became senior manager and CEO. So that's the other opportunity as well. If you're actually challenging those things, the opportunities for your own personal growth is huge as well.
Thanks, Joe. Zoe, I have a question from the audience for you. I will read it and just clarify for both myself and you. The question is, the premise and the statement that the world will move to programmatic is far-fetched and feels a bit misguided, as the creative will increasingly become the variable and platforms will accelerate the engagement. I presume the question is that creative would be the variable, and I suppose apps and platforms would just be a medium.
I mean, we're going to hear more about programmatic later from the experts in programmatic at Group M. What I think we need to understand about programmatic is that it creates a huge opportunity to have more efficient, more effective targeting. But we also know that it's not operating at that efficiency and that effectiveness necessarily today. So it presents us with opportunities. It doesn't take people out of it. There is still the need for creative strategy in terms of defining the approach that you will take. But it may move to an environment over time where we see that there's a shift in spend away from media and towards creative, because you're looking at targeting more tailored creative to your different audience groups. So that may be a trend that we see over time. But I think we need to all recognise that whilst programmatic's not at scale today, it does present a very real opportunity for us to look at ways of having more efficient engagement with our core target audience, and also having more efficient engagement with people who are interested and receptive to our brands. One of the areas where programmatic is falling down today is that everybody's buying against the same behavioural target. So if I go online and search for car insurance, I'm going to get served 3 or 4 or more adverts offering me car insurance. Now, I might be looking to buy car insurance, but that's not very helpful to me as a customer. That's not very helpful in terms of helping me make my choice. It's also not very helpful to the advertiser, who's seeing their messages displayed alongside all of their competition. But it actually overlooks something of value to them. So once they've identified what those touch points are, they can really focus on operating within the fullest extent to which they can leverage those touch points. And it might sound somewhat limiting to suggest that we do fewer things, but if you think of a scenario where you identify that social is a really meaningful touch point for your consumers, you can use social for brand building. You can use it as part of your customer experience approach. You can use it, in fact, in order to convert towards sales. So diverting attention away from some of the touch points that aren't working and focusing on the ones that are, and really ensuring that you're able to maximize the potential of those touch points is something quite powerful. But you need to do it with a degree of real strategic analysis around what's working before you embark on that. But I guarantee that most brands can cut some of the touch points they're using today.
Thanks. Vidya, I want you to just expand on this with particular reference to, touch points and moments of truth, right? If you can talk about that.
Yeah, completely. There are multiple touch points. What I encourage myself and the team to do as well is start looking at the moments of truth, the consumer moments of truth, and see which channels, which touch points play in that. Because we often start with, I want to be on TV, I want to be on, I want to build an app, or I want to have a website, I want to have a microsite. But think of your consumer, the journey, the experience she's going through, he's going through, and think about the moments of truth and what plays in that. So almost encouraging move away from starting with the touch point and think of the consumer journey moments of truth.
Thanks, Vidya. There's a very good question from the audience, something I have a lot of empathy for, to be part of the problem. Well, the question is, the problem is the top leadership in Sri Lankan companies who have an apathy towards digital. That's a question and observation from the audience. Joe, I want to talk to you about a concept we've been discussing about reverse mentoring. Could you talk about that in this context?
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. As I said, it's got to be a structured way of doing that. You can't just sort of say, give up on the fact that if it's an older person who doesn't believe in digital or unengaged in digital. I also think it's a bit of a misnomer. You looked at the stats, half of the Facebook users are over 50 or whatever. So the classic thing is they go, social's not important for our business, and then they jump on Facebook and message their friends. So and they go, well, you're just doing exactly what you're saying you don't believe is important. So I think if you can actually sort of show the executive team that getting into this space isn't difficult, and actually using that reverse mentor, like especially if your customer base is skewing younger, find the youngest guys in your organisation and marry them together with those executive team members. But also have really structured outcomes, because you can sit there and the big part of that is whoever's driving the initiative has to be encouraging and supporting the younger person who's mentoring, because it is a bit intimidating to obviously say to an executive, no, you're wrong, or whatever. But if they've got if they get given data and they can actually show that and they can actually apply it to business outcomes, it's a hard way to do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be younger people, but digital savvy people have to be able to sort of articulate that business. A lot of it's not measurable, as Vij has said, but if you can go through a day in the life of a customer of exactly how they engage with stuff, and that's something that most of the executives are so disconnected from, of how, every day do I get up? Every day in the morning I get up, I grab my phone, I look at Facebook, I do this. So if you actually went through that customer journey with someone, the executive's eyes start lighting up. I mean, I worked with a not the 6110 feature phone from 1999 or whatever it was, and never wanted to change. But once I could show him, and they were in the energy sector, so they had a lot of work with government. Once I could show him that we can actually engage with parliamentarians on what's going on the to suddenly see what happened. I think that's what you've got to do with the executive team. Facts that clear, makes their job easier, makes them more productive, senior management. That's the way you get this done. And it's just fine.
Agree with you. I think it's very important to present an integrated strategy. Every business leader is looking for an integrated strategy. They are not looking for, are you on digital, are you on traditional media, are you on web page and Facebook. They are looking for an integrated strategy. So like you very correctly said, everybody in this room need to think like an entrepreneur. If you were to build your business, what would be the integrated strategy that you would do and present and make a case for it with the senior management? And show the money, show them the money.
Yeah, so allow me to have slightly different this. But I think the business perspective, the dissonance also arises because of the perspectives of the two
people in this conversation. I think while the younger lot is, or the people who are new and at the middle levels are coming up with ideas, they're very excited about the ideas. They want to really get the idea going somehow. At the top management, I think the business impact becomes really important, but also coupled with the business imperatives. Does it have the scale to afford it? Does it have the scale to really make this happen and take it to market? If you're going to go with an integrated strategy, there's going to be an additional capital investment in it, as well as an operational investment in it. Can the business afford all of that? And I think if people who are ideating can keep in the back of their mind that this must lead to a business impact, and measure, or at least put in place measures that can tell you this is going to work, then I think it makes it a lot easier for the management to actually adopt the idea, rather than just having an idea. Because I know even now, even in our teams, a lot of young people come up with, I've got a fantastic TVC I want to go with. Okay, what's it going to cost? It's going to cost about 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, or whatever the money is. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to put it on Facebook. And then what? How many people see it? Me and my family. That's it. That doesn't work. I think and you know that you can't keep buying Facebook likes anymore. There are fake bots and stuff like that. How can you really get this idea populated, create the business impact? If you can work this through, then I think the management will definitely buy into the idea.
Thank you. So, you want to add on?
And it doesn't need to be tied to business.
Exactly. It doesn't. It's a process, maybe.
Yeah, it's innovative thinking. So it's actually sort of saying, as I said, the Coca-Cola example, it's the young people saying, look, why are we doing that? But if they can actually sort of, as you said, take it to the extreme and show them, it'll be a really interesting sort of thing. Actually, I think that's a new event, is actually getting the young people beyond to start building on business.
I mean, it's amazing. I've got a comment from the audience. Before I tell my boss, let's go digital, I will have to polish my CV. So I want to ask you a question, particularly on this, right? How do we actually build empathy and engage the millennials, Gen X, all of that?
I think it's the building culture. I think it's a cultural thing. You've got to make it appealing for them. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and he says, it's a real shame how many really smart, really successful Sri Lankans just leave the country. And it happens in Australia as well. We're losing people. We're a similar sized tree, and we lose everybody in Silicon Valley because the attitude isn't there. So if you can actually encourage people and give them that time, give them that 20% of their day where they can think about anything they want to and explore. The millennials need that. They're not going to. They're not even going to go to a multinational. They're going to start their own company, which will challenge your company and take your market share. That's their attitude now, and they can do it. They see Mark Zuckerberg being one of the richest men in the world, one of the most powerful men in the world, and he did it. Dropped out of college and did it himself. So you've got to give them that opportunity.
That's the reality we need to live in. So Joy.
I will actually address the concern of the person in the audience who's worried about their CV. Digital is still in its infancy. I mean, we've all been connecting, we've all been online for 10, 15 years, but it is still in its infancy, and it changes so rapidly that anybody who thinks they're an expert still needs to maintain and update their skills in order to remain current. So leadership is about often taking a bold stance and having the courage to move forward. It's not necessarily about having all of the answers and having, before you get started on anything. So I would encourage whoever it is to actually make a move towards recognizing that there's the need to build digital capability within the organization and offering to partner with your boss to build that capability, and the fact that you'll benefit from it as well will come along the way. So I would get started and take a leadership position and approach your boss with that. In terms of how we engage some of the millennials, Joe's mentioned the concept of reverse mentoring a couple of times, and that's something that we do within TNS as well. So at an APAC level, we involve our millennials in our board meetings, in our leadership gatherings, not for the whole meeting, but we invite them in and we ensure that they have a voice, and we stress test some of our critical ideas with them as well. And from an engagement perspective, that's incredibly powerful because they've grown up with a different set of expectations around how they'll operate and how they'll interact in the workforce. And they expect to have a voice, and they expect to be heard. They don't expect their contribution just to be in terms of the workload itself. They expect to be part of shaping the business. And that's an opportunity for us who are slightly older to benefit from the fresh thinking, but we need to make sure that we've got the right approaches in place to harness it and to do that in a managed way so that they're not completely running the show, but that we're taking advantage of the fresh ideas and fresh thinking, and also creating that more stronger employee value proposition that keeps them with us rather than heading off to Silicon Valley.
Thank you. Char, would you like to add on something to close the discussion?
Yeah, sure. So I think the key things that I'm hearing in sync that all of us are saying, there will be different points of view and different ways to probably come around to it. It's a DNA issue, right? And it's a mindset thing is what I would really want to leave this audience with, because I think you need to go back and realize for sure that this is the team that's going to make it happen. There's a lot of you out here. There are a lot of influencers out here. And I think today what's happening in organizations is the change drive is not coming just from the top management, and this is what you were talking about as well. The change drive is coming from almost anywhere. And we're also looking at a very dynamic organization structure where we're not looking at people necessarily. In those days, if you didn't work in an organization for 30 years, it was like, oh my God, what a wasted life. Then became 10 years. Oh, 10 years, that's good. You've been in an organization for 10 years. My father was in an organization all of his life, right? But that didn't happen. I mean, I've done 11 years with one group of company, and that today seems like, what a long time. And today, if I look at CVs and go, you've spent 2 years in one organization, that's fantastic. What's becoming important is in those 2 years, what is the change you have brought about? The number of years don't matter anymore. Have you been part of a system that's bringing about a change? Are you someone who's not bound by the boundaries of your geography, of your skill sets? Nothing is a boundary anymore, nothing at all. You want a talking podium, you want the chandelier to throw ice on you as you walk out, anything is possible. Technology today is something that's replicated very quickly. Anything is possible. So ideas need to come more and more rapidly. And I think I would really encourage all over again that look at your boundary way beyond where Sri Lanka is. I think you've got some amazing things happening in this country. It's a landmark in terms of how you've really digitized and gone ahead with connecting the entire nation. And I think you're poised really to take innovations that come out of here to cross borders and really look at how you can deliver value outside to create a much larger consumer base for yourself.
Thank you, Sharu. Thank you very much. So that about brings us to the close of the session. There's a really odd observation for a brand summit, but I will bring that up since it seems quite a critical one. The question is, how do we drive innovation in highly unionized organizations that would question management decisions and look for short-term results? I think as a panel, when we were speaking of, we spoke of different levels of engagement. We spoke of levels of engagement for number one, as drivers of innovation within organizations, to engage in the business leadership and the top leadership so that we take we both build awareness as well as take their business considerations into consideration. Then the second level of engagement we spoke was not to isolate the millennials, Gen X, and the young innovators in the organization by also getting them engaged in driving innovation within the organization. As far as unions are concerned, I think it's a misnomer that unions are negative to a business. It depends on how you actually handle that. I mean, I work in a significant unionized environment. And I must say that if you build transparency and trust, that you can actually get them aligned to achieving corporate objectives. And at any forum, without any fear, I always say today, I am in fact their de facto union leader. I think that's the type of approach you need to take as a business leader, to engage with them and make them part of your organization and your journey to go forward. So I believe our time is up. Thank you very much. It has been a great discussion. Thanks for your time. Over to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you so much. And just before we break lunch, a break for tea, where I would like to say thank you to all our panelists and the session chair. I know that we couldn't respond to most of the questions because it's almost impossible given the time constraint. But I believe that you got the big picture. Okay, omni-channel experience is something you can create now because we have the telco pipeline, we have the Wi-Fi, we have 2.8 million people, okay, who are using feature phones in this country. Okay, so the problem is somebody said the digital is in infancy. It is not. Okay, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technology, in terms of customer usage, this country is reaching maturity, or rather fast maturing fast reaching the maturity. But the problem is the enterprises are far behind in that curve. So it is what is in infancy is the deployment of digital to create that connection with the customer in a meaningful, intimate, profitable, memorable manner. So I hope that you took some understanding about what needs to be done. You as there are a lot of very young people over here. Okay, somebody said that they got to polish their CVs, so better than polish your CV before you make your digital presentation to your boss. But you got to do that. You have to start it somewhere. Okay, we are breaking for tea. We have very short. We have very short time, and we'll be back right at 11:10. And once again, put your hands together and thank our panel. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you so much. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, can we take a group photograph, please? Yeah. Charu, the rare opportunity to stand next to a beautiful. Oh, I didn't realize that other.
Lead sponsor
We are the ones who transform a challenge into endless opportunities. We are the ones who let our work define us with our goal to be the best. We are the ones who never stop. And we are the ones who change the face of technology.